Good evening, A-Push class. I'm Alan, joined by Philip with A-Push News Network.
In our segment today, we will be talking about the factory system. We'll go over aspects of it such as the rise of the factory system, factory conditions, and the role of women and children. The factory system completely revolutionized the way goods were produced by combining machinery with mass labor. It changed our economy forever, but many conditions were required for industrialization to occur. With more on that, here's Liz, joined by Amy Smith, a professor of history at the Harvard University. Liz?
The rise of the factory system is probably the most important economic development in the mid-19th century. Before the War of 1812, most manufacturing took place inside of private homes or small workshops where women and men made products by hand or with small machines. Our manufactured goods nowadays are not produced the way they once were because they're now made with bigger, better machines in an entirely different setting. Today we have a special guest to talk to us. Her name is Amy Smith, an expert who has studied the changes in our economy and lives due to the rise of the factories.
Hello everyone, I have been studying this topic for many years and I'm very happy to be able to share my knowledge with everyone.
Can you start from the beginning so everyone can see the full picture?
Well, yes, of course. For as long as I can remember, things were made by hands in small machines. But then one day, things were starting to change rapidly. Towns started to grow into cities, the demand for manufactured goods went up, and the workshop owners started hiring helpers to increase production. Small domestic manufacturers found it difficult to keep up with the rising demand, so more people began to invest in more efficient powered machinery. The machines produced products quicker, giving hope to large profits.
What machines in particular help give the factories more profit?
There are countless ones, but I would say the ones that impacted the nation the most are the steamboat, the steam engine, and the water frame. The steamboat was adapted by Robert Fulton, who used it for commercial service. The steamboat played a big part in helping manufacturers transport raw material and finished goods. The steam engine was improved by James Watt by letting the machine work at all times. Transportation powered by steam moved goods from place to place more quickly and efficiently than it was before. Arkwright invented the water frame, which was a water-powered spinning frame and was the first factory-operated spinning machine. The machine changed the production of yarn and led through the mechanization that spread everywhere, even though it was invented in England.
So where did the emergence of the factory system start in America?
It all started in New England when textile industries began to use new and bigger machines powered by the water, where the products were all made underneath one roof. This setup soon became known as the factory system, and it spread rapidly during the 1820s, changing the old home-based systems of spinning thread and weaving cloth. By the 1830s, factory production had expanded to shoes and other industries that spread from the New England to the Northeast. During the 1820s and the 1830s, water was the most important power source for the factories. The first major factory towns, Lowell and Lawrence, were created because of the natural waters that powered the mills. By the late 1830s, though, more people began to use coal and wood because the water sources would be frozen during the wintertime.
Where did all the labor supply come from, and did something change to make it happen? I know that many farmers were kind of struggling during this time. So did a lot of farmers leave?
In the 1830s, most of the workers were from the native-born population. But after 1840, the immigrant population became the most important source of labor. The beginning of the industrial labor supply came from the transformation of American agriculture. Each region started to become less dependent on its farm because they could import food in. The availability in large fertile land, improvement of the transportation system, and the new machinery led to the increase of food production. This led to some farmers leaving unprofitable areas in the east and northeast and joining manufacturing. The farmers or new workers were pulled into the labor supply for textile mills for two systems. The first was common in mid-Atlantic states that usually brought the whole families from farm to the mills, and the second brought young unmarried women. The second system became known as the Lowell or Waltham system.
Wow, I never knew any of this. I only had a brief understanding of how the rising of factories happened and how it affected others. Before this broadcast, you briefly talked about someone who benefited from the system.
While I was studying the factory system, I met a factory worker. I asked him about his life a little to get an inside view to see how the factory was for the worker. The first system I talked about usually does not allow single men in by themselves, but the owner made an exception for him. The owner felt sorry for him and let him have a job. The emergence of the factory system has definitely changed his life. He told me he was a poor farmer, struggling to get by on a day-to-day basis. But after he got a job at the factory, he was doing much better. The wage is stable and regular, which is something he really appreciated, and said that the rise of the factory system has been great to him.
What a touching story. I'm glad that someone benefited from the factory system. I've heard many stories about the horrible conditions that were in the factories.
While the conditions might have been not that great, the rise of the factory system was great to America. It caused a drastic change in our economy and way of life. The way we obtain goods, how goods are made, and how people get money are very different now because of the system.
I've gained a lot of insight on the rise of the factory system, and I'm sure our audience has too. I never thought that the rise of the factories would lead to so many things. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us today. We'll see you next time.
That's interesting. Looks like the Industrial Revolution was responsible for everything we use to make this newscast. It's time for the commercial break right now, but when we get back, we'll be discussing the working conditions of these factories.
Young ladies of American farms, how is your life? Tedious, backbreaking work for little pay, strict rule with little independence? If this describes you, then you would be interested in Lowell Mills. Here at our mill, we guarantee a good Christian working environment for you to earn some money. With up to 3 times the salary as a domestic servant, you can earn a living for yourself without having to clean other people's filth. You can now be a part of something great, a revolution in production, providing goods to Americans across the country. You can make this or this. You enjoy independence, a safe working environment with your fellow maidens, and a high salary. There are virtually no downsides. Apply to work at Lowell Mills for a freer, richer, happier life.
Before the break, we were talking about the rise of the factory system, but now we're going to shift over to the working conditions of the factories. With the rise of the factories, the demand for workers also increased. We now see a new brand of workers pop up in society.
Today, we reach out to Mr. David Johnson, a worker in one of these factories. To explain what his life is like, we'll now go to Trin for more on this story.
I am here today with David Johnson, a worker in one of the Boston Manufacturing Company's factories. Mr. Johnson, can you tell us about what you do in an average day?
I usually get here at about 7 in the morning for work, and I'll stay here usually till about 7 in the evening. I get a short lunch break, but other than that, I work straight through the day. My position is spooler, which means I run a spooling machine that combines cotton fibers into yarn. The cotton comes from the previous section that straightened and twisted the cotton fibers, and it will go on to be woven into cloth. It's long and tedious work, just working that machine all day and fixing whatever it messes up. But somebody's got to do it, and who better than the people who need the money so bad that they'll take that kind of work? Everything just seems really dull. I work here for hours on end next to 100 people doing the exact same thing.
Speaking of money, how is the pay? Is it enough to get by?
Oh, I wish. It would make the job kind of nice then, wouldn't it? Seriously though, the wages are terrible. They're not nearly enough to live on. They won't allow us to live in anything but the cheapest house with the most meager lifestyle. To be able to afford even that, my wife and young son also work in the factory every day to help us make ends meet. This is the only way for the common folk who work in the city to make any money. Factory owners give us these wages on purpose so they can cut expenses, which makes their paychecks fatter.
That's just horrible. I'm sorry that you and your family must go through that. Would it be too much to assume that the working environment was safe?
Yup, the place is filthy and never clean, so it's real easy to get sick. A lot of workers here have had the brown lung from all this dust. You could easily get hurt too with all the dangerous machinery or people or the machines messing up. We have accidents often, and people even die sometimes. My buddy Andrew nearly lost his hand by falling into a loom. As if that weren't bad enough, I doubt the foreman cares at all about our condition. All he does is make sure we're working as fast as we can, doing everything perfect. He'll come over and yell at you if you mess up, and he's fired people for just looking at him crooked. Truthfully, he just cares about profit, nothing else. It's no problem if we workers break our bones and die early because of this job. We'll just get replaced by some other poor soul who needs the money. As long as the company can sell as much as they want, everything is fine. Honestly, I can't blame them. Who cares about ants? That's like what we are to them, just little workers who don't really matter. Our world is separate from theirs, and we rarely meet. That's the reality of life in the factory.
Completely immoral. You're a little more than slaves. Did it always used to be like that?
Actually, no. I can remember a time when all the clothes were homespun, and anything manufactured would come from England. But all these new inventions started popping up, and Adam Smith's ideas about capitalism really took hold in America. And here we are, hell on earth. I guess they just saw that we could start making our own stuff in factories and make a lot of money off of it, and that it was better than the old system, at least to them. As for the immorality, of course it is, but what puts more money in the owner's pockets? Immorality, of course. And that's what will keep on happening, since money makes the world, or at least America, go round.
I understand that the factory system has treated you and millions of other Americans unfairly, but can you think of a positive side to it?
Actually, although the bad far outweighs the good, I can think of a few. For one, anyone can now do the work. It used to be that if you wanted to make a shoe, shirt, barrel, or really anything, you really had to know what you were doing. It would take a lot of time and effort, and it was really easy to screw up. Most people wouldn't be able to make something like that. I know I wouldn't. Because all these things were so hard to make, the only option you really had was to be a farmer. Now though, you can still earn money, but it is something besides farming. It's also in the city, so you have access to stores and whatnot. Any idiot can get the job in the factory, it's just repeating the same actions all day. Yeah, the work sucks and there's long hours, but it's still better than farming. At least a drought or huge storm can't flush your year's earnings down the drain. Also, the factory system means that things are a lot cheaper for Americans. I can now buy things that I wasn't able to before, like new shoes or a nice outfit. So I guess that's kind of good, but do I think it's worth it? Definitely not.
I see. It's most definitely a tough life. Is there anything you can do to alleviate the stress?
I get to talk a lot with other people working next to me since my job doesn't need me to pay attention as much as some other ones. We also sing together. It's kind of fun, actually. A good chunk of the factory just sings a pastime and help everyone get through the day. Sometimes me and my buddies play pranks on each other for fun. It's all harmless, obviously, but it's hilarious and loads of fun. All these things just help me make this godforsaken place more lively. Helps keeps us sane, you know? What's weird is that the foreman doesn't mind it at all that much. He lets us have our fun as long as it doesn't interfere with work. He's not evil, really, just like a machine built to keep this place running as efficiently as possible. He just happens to make the workers' lives miserable, but he's no bad guy.
Interesting. Anyways, Mr. Johnson, thanks so much for your time. It was a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to talk to you and gain such insight into the world of the factory worker. Goodbye and best of luck to you. I hope you are someday able to find a better life.
Thank you, Trin. The sad truth is, factory conditions were not pleasant. However, because money was needed by many families, these simple factory jobs were taken up by children and women, as mentioned by Trin. After the break, we'll be joined by Mary Wilson, who is also a factory worker. Factories can be hard, and we at Smith Legal Associates understand that. If your boss has cheated you out of wages, if your coworker's incompetence has caused you to be injured, or if any of your rights have been violated, please give Smith Legal Associates a call. First consultation is free.
Welcome back. Before the break, we talked about the working condition in these factories. Now, we'll be discussing women's role in the factory system.
Today we are very lucky to be able to have Mary Wilson with us. She's one of the many women who are working in the new factory system. Mrs. Wilson, can you tell us about how you came to be a working mother?
It's a pleasure to be here. Oh yes, I used to be those traditional mothers who stayed at home to manage the kids in the house. Ever since this so-called industrial revolution came along, the need for job surged. So many factories were advertising jobs for women. Previously, a woman could only be a domestic servant or stay at home with the children. With my husband's wages being so little, I decided to begin work at a factory to help. Although he was initially against it, the need for money was great enough to convince him to allow it. Many women share a similar situation and got sucked into working in the factories. Despite all its woes, I feel like we finally have a place in the economy.
What jobs do you and other women do, and how long do you work in a day?
It varies really. I'm a spooler, which means I operate a machine that combines small threads into yarn. Other women operate in the picking, spinning, and weaving rooms at all stages in the process. My hours, as with other women's, are about 12 to 13 hours a day for 6 days a week. It's hard work, but it's something we wouldn't have been able to dream of 50 years ago, so I'm grateful for that.
I see, those are really long hours. I'm sorry to intrude, but why do you want to work in factories?
It's not intrusion. See, factory jobs finally give me a chance to be much more independent. It used to be that all the woman could do was be completely subservient, working in the household or in other people's. This is my chance to get a job, and not only help out the family financially, but actually be a valuable member of society helping to make America great. This sentiment applies to all women. If they don't want to marry, they're not completely outcast. They actually have a way to support themselves. I've been waiting for my chance to finally be independent and have a meaning in this world. The women of America have.
You sure have ambition, ma'am. I admire that. Are there any downsides to working in the factories?
There are many. We are always carefully watched by matrons. Some of the women who stay at the company's boarding house have to be escorted to church. For me, I have to work very long hours and still have to do housework when I get home. It's very difficult to work that hard in the day and have to tend to the house at night. Also, if I'm being completely honest, we have many dissatisfactions over the working conditions, but we rarely have any opportunities to share them. The long hours and bad conditions even led to some to die from tuberculosis or white lung diseases from breathing in cotton gloves. Despite all those economic opportunities, jobs for women are scarce and many of us don't want to lose it.
What about your children? What do they do when you're working all day?
Oh, they're in the factory with me. My youngest, at age 6, plays with a group of small children there. They all have mothers who work, and you can see them running around playing. My oldest, age 14, works as well. Children are usually given jobs based on their ages. For example, a 10-year-old wouldn't operate heavy machinery. He would just fetch items and do easier work suitable for a child. Likewise, it makes no sense for a 16-year-old to have to get into small spaces. He would do more manual work. It's sad that children have to work, especially since they often get hurt on the job and do not have time for schooling. But with wages as low as they are, women and children have to work to support the family.
That's really sad, and I hope that gets regulated soon. Thank you for being with us today. We learned a lot from you, and I hope your life gets better for you and your family.
Yes, thanks so much. It was a pleasure to talk with you and finally share my experiences in the factory.
This is Liz from A&N. Turning back to you, Philip and Alan.
Thanks. It's really sad to see the plight of women and children in these factories. Well, that's all we have for today. I hope that our viewers have learned a thing or two about the factory system. I know I have. This is Alan, and this is my partner Philip from A Push News, signing off.